Hello, thanks for having me. This is my hometown, so I've been excited all week. I've had a bunch of my colleagues in town from Reach for South by Southwest, and so I'm excited to get to kind of be here on the home turf. So I lead growth for Reach. For those of you who don't know, Reach is a blockchain development platform. It's a language compiler and deployment tools. When we talk about mass adoption, I've spent a lot of time here or in general listening, and most solutions to mass adoptions are addressing things down funnel, if you will, at the consumer. Everybody is right now grinding and working to try to find that the application that will drive adoption for blockchain. But we have a little bit of a different approach or a different take on what's going to take to get to that mass adoption. And we believe that that starts upstream with the developer. It's the developer, the builders that are enabling blockchain to come to market. It's the developers and the builders that are going to build that next application that's going to be needed for mass adoption. And it's not going to be a application. It's going to be many applications, a whole ecosystem. And right now there's a bottleneck at that part. So in terms of what that bottleneck looks like, and I think we've all discussed it, but there's a lot of money, right? He just got off the stage to tell us all about how much money there is. Blockchain and crypto, it's money, 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 money go up, money this, money that, right? There is no shortage of capital. But we know that if you're truly excited about blockchain technology, the implications of blockchain technology are further reaching than just making a couple of nerds rich one day, right? It's about really decentralizing power. It's about decentralizing applications. It's about ownership and empowering the disenfranchised. And able to get there, we have to be able to incentivize people to build. All right, so we got the money. Great. Why aren't we there yet? Are we lacking ideas? No. Everybody and their dog has an idea. My neighbor has an idea. My dad's friend has an idea. I'm going to put this on blockchain, that on blockchain. Everything you can imagine, there's somebody who has the idea of how they're going to put it on blockchain. So we have money, we have ideas, we have a lot of enthusiasm. So why aren't we there yet? And the answer is because we don't have people to build it. And you could say, okay, look at this room, look at these. I was at ETH Denver and there was thousands of people there ready to build, excited, right? Sure, fine. It's actually a drop in the bucket. So if you think about it, I think there was a report that came out in November that stated that they had identified approximately under 40,000 developers who have committed code to the blockchain. Okay, 40,000. If you start thinking about who those 40,000 are, what that looks like, breaking it up, how many of them have been developing for more than a year or two? How many of them are actually capable of creating applications? How many of them are so rich that they don't even want to work for your dumb idea, right? You start really whittling it down, and you have a drop in the bucket of people who can actually execute the ideas that all of this capital has been deployed to address. My job is to go and talk to investors and CEOs and to VCs. And the thing I hear over and over again is, we've invested in X and they can't find the team to put it together. That is the problem. That is the bottleneck. That's what's holding us back right now. And until we find solutions that enable that growth to happen exponentially, we will continue to have this slow drip of applications, which then leads to a slow drip of adoption. So how do we fix that? So in our estimation, part of what's holding development back is this ecosystem that's quite complex because of the fragmentation. It's expensive for a number of reasons, and we'll go into that. And then because of the fragmentation, there is a tribalistic kind of toxic culture that also drives away the builders again. And I come back to the builders because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how enthusiastic we are or how much money we have. If we can't find somebody to build it, it will just not happen. So when we talk about complexity, and many of you already know this, but right now, the pervasive language available is Solidity, right? That's what most of blockchain is built on, an EVM. But if you go beyond Ethereum ecosystem, you start to run into all of these niche proprietary languages, right? And most of them exist at a low level. So when we talk about how do we simplify, we're talking about abstractions. And so if we think about EVM as an assembly language, potentially Solidity as C, the world is not built that way. That's not what has helped us achieve scale in mobile development, or and that's really where we need to get to. That's the objective. Not only is it difficult, it takes a long time, or it takes quite a bit of onboarding to get in. Once you do get in, you're not just learning the language, you have to learn the infrastructure and the high stakes of blockchain development. If you, forgive my language, fuck up, you are going to cost a lot of money. Small, tiny errors have big ramifications when it comes to blockchain development. So we have this situation currently where we do have a small ecosystem of developers. The developers that are in that ecosystem are largely new developers coming in within the last 2 to 3 years. And then you're entrusting them and hoping and wishing, build this perfect contract and don't leave any leaks. And we're going to send it to the auditor, who's going to take 6 months to audit it. But the secret of the auditor is that they also just have some guy in the back room that's also editing and reviewing it by hand. So now you have two relatively junior in the scope of things Solidity developers who are reviewing complex thousands of lines of code and hoping and praying that there are no vulnerabilities left open. And what we've found is that just doesn't work. $14 billion was leaked out of blockchain applications last year. We've come to kind of accept that that is the risk that we pay. This is why we get these high interest rates, that risk reward. But that's not how we drive adoption to the masses. This is why they're going to always be scared to get in. If this is normal, commonplace, there's no way to get there. We look at it and say, okay, how can we fix this? How can we streamline this? How can we make it easier for other people to get in? How do we make it more inclusive? Our CTO often talks about, people talk about Rust or Go, or these are still very niche languages for top, tippy top developers. When we talk about inclusivity, we're saying, how do we get developers around the world to start developing in blockchain? So Reach has developed a language which syntaxes very closely resembles JavaScript. JavaScript is the most popular language in the world. There are 12 million JavaScript developers available. 12 million versus that 30,000 I talked about earlier. We believe that blockchain agnosticism is going to be a very important key about driving this mass kind of scale of development that's going to be necessary for us to hit mainstream. If we are focused in on all of these niches and we're unable to, quickly move from place to place, or if one thing collapses and the other one, it's ever constantly changing, and the ability for one, I've talked to a number of projects who tell me this story. I came in, I started in Ethereum, it was too expensive, I wanted to move somewhere, and I had to rebuild everything from the ground up. That's not a scalable model, right? And the other thing is, we find that we don't need to necessarily burden the developer with the econometrics models and the tokenomics of the blockchain and the specific kind of elements of the smart contract. Rather, we'd like them to focus on the business logic, and we'll talk a little bit about how we do that. When it comes to expense, there's a couple of things. One is it's expensive in terms of time to develop the skill, right? So if Solidity takes, let's say, very generously, if you're really top tier, 6 months maybe to learn Solidity, another year to be really competent about being able to do it. That's an opportunity cost to the developer. Not everybody has the time or ability to take the opportunity cost and learn it. We also have very quick moving, right? So if you do invest in learning some kind of secondary language like Cairo, who's to say that that's going to exist for any long-term period of time? There are some very promising projects that are going on in that space, but they will always be limited of scalability without having a robust ecosystem of developers. That's expensive. Another way that it's expensive right now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're getting a seed fund, a seed amount, and you're getting, let's say, $500,000, $500,000, $1 million. In Web 2, you can put out a pretty robust proof of concept. At ETH Denver, we were hearing 500,000 for a single developer to come in and build Web 3. That's just simply not scalable. That's also not inclusive. These are the impediments that will stop that great idea. My big fear, and the thing that I imagine all of the time, is that the world-changing mass adoption that we're all trying to get to is written on a whiteboard somewhere and can't get the person to build it. And that's what we're hearing over and over again. So again, if you are friends and family round and you're pulling things together and you can't find somebody to build that idea, again, not inclusive, not a way for us to scale. Let's see, did I miss anything? Um, yeah. So the audits, they take a long time, right? And they're expensive, and for the most part, they're kind of bullshit. I mean, not to, if you're an auditor in here, but we're seeing that they just don't work, right? It's something that we do to make ourselves feel better. It's a safety blanket, but at the end of the day, it's not doing what it's supposed to do because we're we're in the technology age and we're still trusting human eyes to find that one error, and then we put it into the world, and we have thousands of bad actors that spend days, months evaluating it, looking for that one seam that they can come in and take all the money. So again, one of the ways that we've looked to do this is through formal verification. So it's not something that I was heavily familiar with, but really what we look at is saying, okay, there are these processes that are involved. NASA has used for years and years and years, where essentially they do using kind of SMT solvers, turning these complex models into math equations or proofs that they can go in and prove for every conceivable variation and validate that they are mathematically safe and correct. This is not a scalable model at the time, right? If I do what NASA does, oftentimes the cost of doing a formal verification supersedes the thing that you are verifying. So in practice is only practical to use when the costs are excruciatingly high. In reality, that's what happens with blockchain, right? We have very high cost assets that we are trying to protect through these smart contracts, and we need to do that. So what we've done is automated that process. Our compiler is able to take Reach code that looks like JavaScript, run it through create these SMT solvers, and validate that these contracts are safe at deployment. This is what we believe will help speed up a lot of this adoption, as well as create better security for that scalable model that we need. In developing with Reach, you'll see, I'll show you some examples. We can really help accelerate that audit process. We're working with auditors now that are being able to validate that they trust the Reach code in the same way that if you were having JavaScript audited, they wouldn't go down and look at the assembly level. They would look at the JavaScript level, is what is happening now with Reach code. So the last thing, we all know this. It's almost comical at this point that there are these really evangelistic, very, what do we call them, ETH or maxis, right? They get so excited about one particular ETH ecosystem or one particular protocol, and we know why. At the end of the day, it's oftentimes not about the excitement of the underlying technology. It's because I've invested a bag and I want that number to go up. And so I get very excited and very passionate about that one thing, Ethereum or Solidity or that one chain that I know about that nobody else knows about. And I pitch it all day, all the time. When it comes down then to me entering the space as a new developer and I'm trying to figure out where do I go, what do I do, we get decision paralysis. We have high cost of making the wrong decision about investing in a specific ecosystem. And the motivations for investing in that ecosystem are unclear, right? We are not sure why so-and-so is excited about said ecosystem. That is because there's no uniformity. So there's a really fragmented market, not only from my macro perspective, but then when you look at the technology underlying it, there are no standards, there's no uniformity unless you're in a specific ecosystem. And that's just not smart as a community to place all our bets on a single ecosystem, right? That's not diversifying our portfolio, if you will. And so there's really this kind of idea of like, if I'm here or you're there, that there's some kind of elitism that comes with that. We believe that by using Reach, we've created a level of abstraction that exists above individual protocols. Our community, we have about 5,000 developers now building in Reach. They are often communicating, helping each other without ever actually knowing where or what they're working on. We know, because we can see some background kind of information, or we know who's talking to who, that we see developers working on an Ethereum Solidity project, communicating with developers in Algorand and helping each other out. That doesn't happen anywhere else in their building at that time. Our language, it is by using a language that's standardized across not only Web 2, but now into Web 3, we can use standard libraries and a lot of standard practices in order to focus on the business logic of building the application rather than getting completely zeroed in on just the smart contract. And we can bring in that entire library as well as community to all work together. And just particularly when it comes to the technologists, getting away from kind of the toxic cultural aspects of just the investment parts. So let's see, pressing the wrong button. So that's so reach, right? How do I've addressed there are a couple of things that we're trying to do. This is some of the use cases of applications that have already been built on Reach that are currently either on test nets or about to launch on mainnet. Where we've really been in production for about a year, and if you want to see what it feels like, this is a Reach application. Teal is a language in the Algorand space that's their equivalents of assembly or Solidity. It's about the same level in terms of that. So about 1,000 lines of code in Teal or Solidity. We did a similar application in a little less than 100 lines. This is the efficiency that comes with developing in Reach, right? It feels like JavaScript. And I believe, Keegan here, if you want to come ask him, he's working on a DEX right now called Humble Swap. And I believe it's 370 odd lines of approximately to put the AMM together, DEX. And something similar is looking at like 2,500 lines from my understanding. So we're able to do this much faster, efficient development process. Not only that at that level, but we're bringing in engineers and developers from JavaScript. We're able to hire them and bring them in and make them effective and to get them up and running on Reach in 2 to 3 months. It's really game changing for us when we go into hire and we have that big pool of talent to pull from, versus a lot of our competitors and people we speak with are struggling every day just to find a engineer, and we've grown to 40. When it comes to the actual architecture, you really are able just to take in standard libraries and connect. The Reach code will compile and to the the index, and you can put it together with your application, and you're ready to go. Right? It's not you don't have to get in the weeds of the smart contract. It's abstracted away from it for a couple of reasons. One, that efficiency, but two, there's a level of protection that comes from that you're not tinkering or messing with the smart contract or leaving open vulnerabilities. So I think we all agree blockchain is the future. We know that it pays well. It pays probably much better than that now. This is an old slide. And we believe that we have the tools and the ability to be the go-to blockchain development platform because of the way that we've architected it, because we have tried to remain at this high level of abstraction where developers can come in, build at scale, where talent is available at scale, and where we can unblock this bottleneck of talent. Again, money, you have it. Ideas, too many. Talent and development is where we're lacking. And so a solution like Reach and what we're doing is the way that we think we can do that. So we believe the future of blockchain is in Reach, and I have time for a couple questions, if there are any. Yeah. So it's funny you should ask. I didn't plant that. So if you have a developer or you are a developer or you're building something, this weekend, actually, we are hosting a kickoff of a boot camp at UT Austin. So for Saturday and Sunday, we'll be doing free instructional work, bringing in quite a bit of our team and leadership team to discuss some of the basics of blockchain and really focus on bridging the gap for Web 2 developers into Web 3. That 2-day event, free. We'd love all of you guys to come and join us. What we then have coming up after that is a 6-week cohort of developers who are able to come in and learn Reach in about 6 weeks. So very, very realistically, like I caught wind of a group out of Australia that had set out to build a stable coin. They set out, they started to learn one of these kind of endemic low-level languages. They were really struggling through it. They discovered Reach. The team said, okay, we're going to pause all development. We're going to take 2 weeks. We're going to get into the library. We're going to get in and learn exactly what the language is. And then in 2 weeks, we'll make a decision about whether or not we want to continue. They did that just simply on our Discord and our docs. We didn't even know about them. We weren't working with them. Within 4 weeks, they had their MVP ready to go. And they were, I believe, 6 months ahead of their original roadmap. That coin is part of the Algorand ecosystem. They're a company called XBacked and should be launching in the next month. I believe they're in their test net, but able to accelerate that development quite a bit. They've since been working very closely with us on a number of things, but have given us example after example of refactoring smart contracts in 2 days that would have taken 2 to 3 weeks. We sent a team to ETH Denver, and they were able to build quite amazing product in 2 days and win one of the categories there. So again, when we talk about scalability, this is what we believe it looks like. It looks like efficiency, it looks like access to talent, and it looks like an ability for us to really mirror some of the architectural needs and scalability at the building level that you see in Web 2. Because again, we all have the ideas, and that's everybody has an idea, but it's execution where things happen. It is open source. Yeah, the business model is through the protocols. So the protocols need developers. That's what's going to help them win. When they get applications onto their mainnet, that's what they need. So we work closely with the protocols. So Algorand Foundation, for example, Ethereum Foundation, Cosmos Foundation, is having us enable or create the integration between our compiler and their languages to make sure that Reach applications compile and are able to then go into those protocols. That make sense? They pay us, yeah, to maintain that integration. So 2 days are in person, Saturday and Sunday, and then the 6 weeks is online. So, and there's papers around and the teams around. We can give you all the information so you can sign up. Yeah, that's a great question. We talk about that quite frequently. So there's a good anecdote that comes with that. We all know that nobody really writes in assembly, right? There is trade-offs in writing in higher level languages. So we are familiar. We found out about Google hiring an assembly developer, and they hired him to rewrite some of the code in the database because they found that if they were able to make it just a little bit more efficient, they'd save $2 million in their air conditioning. Okay, that is at the edges of use cases of necessity, right? We are developing Reach in such a way that we believe that when it comes down to the necessity of altering kind of the underlying code base, like Solidity or down to the EVM, that those use cases exist really at the fringes and at the edges. And so when we talk about the abstraction being protective of the underlying smart contracts, when you're developing smart contracts and you're managing hundreds of lines, if not thousands of lines of code, oftentimes the developer has to hold in their head the equations and the closures of the exchanges, right, of the transactions, and that can be lost, particularly when working in teams, right? So by abstracting away from the guts of the smart contract, if you will, we prevent a lot of these kind of handwritten errors that allow, for example, one of the exploits that we saw a couple weeks ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that there was a rounding error on like the third or fourth decimal where it rounded up instead of down, something like that, right? And from that, millions of dollars was abstracted, or not, sorry, I'm using the word too much, but extracted. And so those are the kind of things that we can protect against by abstracting the smart contract, as well as then putting it through the compiler and doing the SMT proofs to validate it. I got the hook. I'll take one last question.
Does the rich help the security for some of the chain, like because some of the metadata of the chain compensate for those kind of security for some of the change?
Do you know? Did you understand that? Can you repeat the question?
Metadata of the tokens is some of the chain they store off chain, so that exposes security. So there's a
We'll follow up. Okay, we'll follow up with you guys. But guys, again, appreciate all of your time and your attention and the opportunity to speak here with you guys today. If you have any questions, follow up. A number of our team is here, and we have a couple of documents and links if you're interested in learning more. So thank you for your time.